afternoon. I hope you are enjoying your lunch. Again, we appreciate you being with us today. I'm C.G. McCord, State Government and Community Relations Manager at Eastman Chemical Company, and also the 2010 Chair of the Government Relations for the Kingsport Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Kingsport Chamber, welcome to our luncheon with Governor Bredesen today. To begin with, I'd like to recognize our 2010 Kingsport Chamber Government Relations sponsors. Representing these companies today are Alan Hill with AT&T, Nick Pavlis with Charter Communications, Charlie Floyd with Domtar, Teresa Lee with Eastman Chemical Company, Blaine Douglas with Holston Valley Medical Center, and Brad Knoll with King Pharmaceutical. In addition, sponsoring companies include Atmos Energy and Appalachian Power, and our photography sponsor, Dragonfly, say that twice. Try it 3 times real fast. Dragonfly Digital. Thanks so much for your support of this event, as well as our community. We're fortunate to have Governor Bredesen here today to discuss some important education initiatives he's proposing in the upcoming special session of the legislature. But before I introduce the Governor, I'd like to introduce a couple of the folks that are out here today to you. From Senator Alexander's office, Lana Moore is here, and Bridget Baird from Senator Corker's office. I'm going to just recognize local officials now and leave our state folks for the governor to recognize. But we got members of the Kingsport Board of Mayor and Aldermen. How am I doing, Keith? Okay. And Mayor Phillips, you're sitting there right to his right. You're chuckling too, aren't you? I see you. Johnson City Mayor Jane Myron and the council there, and the Sullivan County Mayor Steve Godsey. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited about the number of education leaders that we have with us today. We have a strong representation from the Kingsport City Schools, Bristol City Schools, Johnson City Schools, Sullivan County Schools, Hawkins County Schools, Washington County Schools are also here. Northeast State Community College is well represented here today, University of Tennessee, Tusculum College, Lincoln Memorial University, King College, ETSU. We also have our very own Paul Montgomery from the Tennessee Board of Regents, and Fielding Ralston with the State Board of Education. Area Chambers, Lisa Meadows is here from the Bristol Chamber, Gary Mabry from the Johnson City Chamber, and Miles Burdine from the Kingsport Chamber. And also Deb Woolley from the Tennessee Chamber is here with us today. Governor, as you can see by your audience, we think a lot of you and the way that you have led our state over the years. We appreciate the tremendous job you've done dealing with some of the challenging and diverse issues. From a regional perspective, the leaders in this room have also done a tremendous job with issues in Northeast Tennessee over the years. A professor from Berea College, Loyal Jones, wrote an essay on Appalachian values that really captures the essence and the characteristics of the people that call this place home. He writes about the values that we hold true here in East Tennessee. Some of those are things like faith sustains us, that we are hard workers, and we know that even though we work hard work does not always bring a sure reward. We're neighborly and hospitable. We are relationship and family-centered. We are modest. We believe that we are no better than anyone else, but no worse either. And we're pretty self-reliant. The weekend before Christmas, we got snowed in, and many of us were without power for almost a week. And there's a story that many of you don't know, but the mayor got snowed in, and there was a couple of relief workers that discovered that Mayor Phillips was stuck at his house. And after a couple of days, they got a little bit worried about him. And so they trucked down the big hill where he lives and slipped and slid into his driveway and made it up to his door, and he knocked on his door, and he opened it, and they said, "Hello, we're here for some relief." And the mayor said, "Well, you know, it's a pretty hard winter, but come on in, I'll see what we can do." But we know that the key to self-reliance is education. And we are committed to doing all that is needed to move forward with additional education improvement and collaborative efforts to help students in Northeast Tennessee. A good example is the work that's currently underway through the leadership of President Janice Gillum at Northeast State, Dr. Richard Kitzmiller with the city schools, and Kingsport Mayor Dennis Phillips. All have been working diligently on plans to further demonstrate how a school system and a community can transform the education landscape around college readiness, college access, and college completion. We are excited about the opportunities that Race to the Top brings and will allow us the ability to implement things we have wanted to do for a long time. Now it's my privilege to introduce the governor to you, Tennessee's 48th governor. He has remained committed to accountability and open government and works diligently to make state government operate within its means and be more responsive to Tennesseans. I only have time to share a few examples of his leadership, so here goes. He's exhibited strong financial leadership through challenging times. He's launched a series of health insurance programs for the uninsured. He's been instrumental in his support for the Imagination Library, which provides a free book each month to children under age 5 in all 95 counties. He's led the restructuring of long-term health benefits that are available to seniors in Tennessee. He's maintained an unwavering commitment to raising standards and accountability in education. In addition, Governor Bredesen has worked very hard to create new jobs and opportunities for families, including this summer's announcement that Volkswagen will build an assembly plant in Tennessee. Governor, we'd like to express to you what a pleasure it has been to work with you over the years and the members of your staff. We have had the privilege of working with many of your staff on efforts like the Regional Center for Advanced Manufacturing and other economic and community development efforts. They represent you well. So, Governor, it's a great privilege to welcome you and to turn the program over to you. And I know you'll do a better job speaking than I just did. So, welcome.
Thank you for that introduction, CG. I thought the part where you were talking about my accomplishments was really very good. It was wonderful. And I appreciate it. Thanks to my friend Miles Burdine, who's been such a strong ally, along with the entire Northeast Tennessee business community, for everything you do to move us forward in education. I was thinking when I was flying up here, I was looking, I think the last time I was with this group was just about a year ago. January of 2009, I was looking at the schedule. I'm now 7 of my 8 years through the governorship. When I ran for this office, all the time I spent in Northeast Tennessee, I had my hands raised and was pledging over and over again to, I will remember that the state doesn't end at Knoxville. I will remember the state doesn't end at Knoxville. I hope you are now convinced that I do know that, and I certainly have enjoyed my many trips to this part of our state. I certainly want to recognize a number of officials as I begin who are here. First of all, Congressman Phil Rowe. Phil, thank you for being here. And where did he go to? Right down there. You got that. And Senator Mike Falk is here, as well as Representatives Jason Mumpower, John Lundberg, Tony Shipley, and Dale Ford. And thank you all for being here. It is a great pleasure to work with our legislative delegation. We have in Tennessee, there certainly is partisanship. We have avoided some of the really toxic parts of it that have taken over Washington. And for that, I thank all of you for the willingness to kind of, when the elections are over, we put things aside, we figure out how to move forward and get things done. And I think it's always been a great strength of our state, and one that I treasure very much. Thank you all for the way in which you participate in that. And I also want to mention, he was introduced, but Fielding Ralston is here, and Fielding, as you may know, is the chairman of the State Board of Education. When I travel around and talk with other governors, usually they have nothing good to say about their state boards of education. There's a constant sort of butting of heads between governor and state boards of education, and it's something I totally cannot relate to, because we've had a wonderful relationship and have worked together, and I think in common cause on a number of issues. And for that, to you and through you to all of your associates and members, please thank you so much for the constructive way you've approached all of these things. I'm here to talk about this special session of the legislature. As you know, next week we will go into special session, one that will focus exclusively on education, really both K through 12 and higher education. It begins on January 12th, which is 6 days from now, which is effectively the same time that the regular session would have started. What it really means is the legislature, before we get mired in what will be a difficult budget year, are going to deal with some education issues first, and I think that's very important to pull these things out of it and get them the concentration and the focus that they really deserve. I've spoken with both Lieutenant Governor Ramsey and Speaker Williams. They've assured me they're committed to making the session run smoothly. They're committed to making it successful. These are things that we're talking about that they have bought into. I remember last month, the day I called them to let them know I was thinking about issuing this call. You never quite know how the legislative leadership will react because there's so many considerations when you're leading a chamber of 33 or 99 different lawmakers. Both of them immediately saw the value of taking the education up in this way and certainly stepped right up to the plate and embraced the concept. And as a result, I think we're going to see some real changes in education in our state as a result of that. Today I wanted to just sort of step you through what it was we were trying to accomplish. And most of all, I'm here, you can read in the newspaper or see on television the details of this stuff. I'm here really to ask you for your help in helping to make sure that this happens and this moves forward. As you know, during the time that I've been governor these past 7 years, I have really worked hard to make education our highest priority, certainly at times when other parts of state government have been being regularly cut because of the financial situation, both in my first couple of years and now in my last couple of years. We've fully funded the basic education program. We've added some substantial funding over the years. We've done a lot to raise standards and tightening up accountability in the system. We still have a lot of work to do in Northeast Tennessee and across the state. You hear a lot of talk about graduation rates and degree rates, but I think one of the best ways of looking at this is really look at the educational pipeline that we have. Put it in plain terms. In Tennessee today, for every 100 students who enter 9th grade, who leave 8th grade and start 9th grade, in our public schools, 67 of them will graduate from high school in 4 years. Clearly an unacceptable number and one we need to move. Of those 67 who graduate, 43 will go directly to college after graduation, and of those, 29 of them will return for their second year, for their sophomore year, and of those 29, just 19 will graduate with either an associate's degree or with a 4-year degree in a 6-year period. So basically the pipeline in Tennessee is for every 100 kids who go into 9th grade, 19 of them will end up with a 2- or 4-year degree. That doesn't work. It's something we have got to change in our state. That's a number which is below the national averages for the number of adults who have these special skills. The rate at which we're graduating people is not going to allow us to get to and to exceed the national average. And you know, when people make decisions about where they invest capital, where they put businesses, where they create jobs, it used to be about where the railroads crossed and the rivers came together. Today, it's about where the human resources are to make those businesses successful. That's what is bringing people. That's what's driving these decisions about where you create jobs. We have got to get our state in a stronger position in this regard. With this year's budget, we obviously are not going to be putting a lot of new money into education. We're going to work on the BEP as we have in the past. But one of the things that I've tried to say as governor is, look, the business cycle hasn't gone away. There's going to be good years, there's going to be tough years, and there's a cycle of those coming, and every governor is going to experience some of both. In the good years, there's some kinds of things you do. You put money into things, you start new kinds of projects. In the tougher years, you don't stop, you just do different things. And this is a year in which we need to tackle a number of things that don't have big price tags on them, but will also make significant differences in how well we operate our education system. This year we really had kind of two unique opportunities drop in our lap that let us focus on this entire educational pipeline in one fell swoop. And let me talk about those two opportunities. The first of them is Race to the Top. The federal government's Race to the Top, that's President Obama's challenge for education innovation. And in the so-called stimulus package, $4 billion was placed to be split between a handful of states that proved that they're ready to excel in public education. It is a very small number of states, probably single digits, who will share and divide up this money. So it's a significant amount of money. Tennessee is a state that is well positioned in this regard. We're in a good position to compete for this money, both due to some of the things we've done recently and due in part to some of the things that happened back in the 1980s in education here in our state. And a lot of people in the education world concur with that. We're viewed as competitive in part because of the work we've done in high school standards reform through the diploma project. Tennessee really is a genuine leader in the nation in this idea of enhanced standards and making sure our standards correspond to what kids are really going to need to compete in national and international marketplaces in the years ahead. And that's something which actually has been implemented with a lot of help of this chamber, or a lot of help with Eastman and the entire business community up here in this part of our state. We're also now emerging as a national leader in the critical areas of science and technology and engineering and math, the so-called STEM disciplines, as you know, as they're called, in which I know will be a central focus in the new academic village here. This part of our state is exercising some real leadership in this regard. Just last month, we unveiled a new partnership with Battelle, which many of you know is a world-class R&D organization. They're headquartered in Ohio. We're connected with them because the University of Tennessee and Battelle are the joint managers of Oak Ridge National Laboratories, which is really the premier national lab in the country at this point. In Ohio, where they're based, they've quarterbacked one of the most extensive networks of STEM programs in schools in the country, and they've agreed to help do the same in Tennessee. This is not something we're paying them for. This is something they are bringing resources to the state to help us with. And the sharing of best practices and professional development and student development is really pushing us forward in this regard. When we reached this agreement with Battelle, I talked with Ted Strickland, who's a friend of mine, who's the governor of Ohio, and we've agreed to really, let's take this and make it really a state-to-state connection. Ohio is not a next-door state, but it's pretty close, and there's a lot of opportunities for exchange of faculty and exchange of students and exchange of ideas that we can use across those states and really help to start moving this forward in Tennessee. These kinds of improvements have positioned us to do well in Race to the Top. But kind of ironically, one of the greatest assets in publication we have is one that we don't use to the full extent. We don't use it to the full extent because we have legal impediments to doing so. We have laws that say you can't use these. Some of you may know that Tennessee is really the envy of a lot of people in the national education community, because we have one of the oldest and most robust databases of student performance in the country. This is the value-added stuff that you hear about. It started back in the 1980s, and I believe it's the longest longitudinal database in the country. It's a real asset in Tennessee. And while Tennessee was a real pioneer in this, this is very much where other states are going at the moment. We are out in a great leadership position on this. What we don't do, however, is effectively use that information to help improve teacher quality and drive change in the classroom. The times have got to change. It's going to take legislation to do it. And specifically what we need to do is we need to unlock that data to make better use of it in teacher and principal evaluations. Now, I know this causes concern among teachers, and I've spent an awful lot of time these past years and talking to an awful lot of teachers, and I certainly recognize it. It is a different way of doing things than has happened in this state for a long time. Two or three things that I'd say. One, I have enormous respect for teachers as a profession, and you've heard me say in this room that, in my mind, it is the entire game. If you've got great teachers in your schools, we will educate our children. If we don't have great teachers in our schools with the tools they need to do it, it doesn't matter how many tests you give or how many laptops you have or anything else, you're not going to get the job done. If the problem is one of really making the best possible use of that human capital, to me, it is only sensible that you've got to take data you have about how well teachers perform, how well the students in those classrooms learn, and use it as a part of the evaluation process of teachers. It's not a matter of slamming somebody or anything else. It's a matter of saying if these students aren't learning, let's figure out why. Let's get some professional development into the hands of the teachers. Let's figure out, when you make that initial 10-year decision at 3 years, let's look at how well the teachers are doing before you make a decision. It's not the only thing you look at. Nobody in their right mind would make student performance the only thing you look at in evaluating how well a teacher is doing, but it certainly ought to be a part of the equation. And it is not in Tennessee today, and that's one of the specific things that I want to change. Making these kinds of adjustments, it's a change in culture in the school system, and I understand that. It will move us dramatically ahead toward the process of improving the outputs of our schools. We need to get that 67% graduation rate up much higher. I'd love to see 90% is the number I felt that we should do. We should commit to some 3 years ago. Commissioner Webb and I have communicated with the leadership of all these key groups, and teachers in particular say they're questioning the details, and we'll keep talking with them, but looking around the state, it's clear that our school systems are ready to step up to this kind of a challenge. Today, virtually every system in the state has signed on as a partner in this Race to the Top application, knowing full well that bold expectations are required by this. The last thing as I've talked to teachers, I've said to them, say, look, this is not some crazy ideological thing that, if you change parties one way or another, it's all going to change. This is something that has been advocated by Republicans for a long time. This is something that is being advocated by a very Democratic administration in Washington today. It's the way the world is moving, and Tennessee needs to get on board with this and make use of it. Now, as we head toward the session, some people are asking, well, why now? Why are you calling a session and asking people to act on this in literally 7 days? The answer is simple. Our Race to the Top application is due on January 19th, that's 2 weeks from now, at the U.S. Department of Education in Washington. In the November guidelines that were issued on this, the feds made it clear that the states that will be most competitive will be the ones that have these policy changes that they want in place at the time of the application. In other words, they don't want to hear about what we're going to do. They want to take a snapshot on the 19th of January as to what we have done in making it legally possible to do these things. We don't have to have all the details worked out. We have to have the legal ability to do it. Some of the other states that are considered competitive with us, Louisiana and Florida are two in the South that come to mind, already have these things in place and would give them an enormous advantage compared to us if we fail to act in this regard. I mean, make no mistake, this is an attempt by the Obama administration to spur in a matter of weeks some of the changes that might ordinarily take years to happen or never happen in doing it. But it is a thing, the planets have lined up on this. There's a very good reason to do it. It's something we need to do anyway. If we weren't even applying for Race to the Top, these are still things that we need to do here in our state. It's the kind of bipartisan approach that I think can really help us to get some things done. We've been talking about these ideas for a number of years. In 2010, this is the way the educational world is moving. Tennessee can and should lead the way in this, as we have in other things. If money can be a catalyst, so much the better in terms of focusing it. But these are things that need to be accomplished. Now, the second part of the special session involves higher education, and more specifically, how do we drive college completion rates, which is something this community understands very, very well. Everybody has known this community's Educate and Grow campaign was an innovative model for excellence and innovation. The recognition you received last year from the Kennedy School at Harvard is validation that your outlook is at the leading edge of what's going on in the country. Your approach on building on the programmatic successes with the infrastructure to support that all, like the academic village, is exactly the kind of thing we need to be exploring for Race to the Top across the state of Tennessee. I think you figured out here a long time ago what everyone else knows, which is not just about getting kids through high school anymore. It's about getting them degrees or certificates so they can get those quality jobs and be able to move forward. I know I've talked to you a little bit when I've been here about my own personal history. I grew up with my grandmother, who had 11 children in the town I grew up in. Of those 11 children, one of them had a college degree, got it in the military, a man who got it in the military. The others either had high school degrees or, in the case of some of the spouses, not high school degrees. They all had what I would call very successful lives. They all owned their own home. A couple of them had their own farm. You know, they had boats. They had all those kinds of you know, things, a runabout to put on the lake or something like that. Because you could come back from World War II and get a job in a factory and be willing to work hard and be right in the mainstream of the American economy. The thing that's changed is you can't do that anymore. If you go out into the workplace with nothing but a high school degree, you are not in the mainstream of the American economy. You need more than that to be able to do it, and you need the learning skills that go with being able to continue to learn over the course of a lifetime. It's just the world is changing, and we have got to make sure that our institutions in this state change along with that world. We've had a group of legislators and others who've been meeting on the subject of these college completion rates really for I guess 6 or 7 months now. It's the heads of a number of the relevant committees in the legislature. It's the board chairs, or I guess technically the board vice chairs of the 3 higher education boards we have, THAC and the Board of Regents and the UT board, a couple of other interested parties, and we've been sitting down over lunch for quite a while and meeting and talking about this. This stuff is coming to a head with, I'd say, some pretty broad consensus about some things we need to do at the same time as this race to the top, and so bundling this all together and treating it in a special session seemed like the right way to approach this. You know, part of it is just responsible fiscal management. We spend more than $1 billion a year on higher education. It's a lot of money in Tennessee. When you look at our part, that part of the educational pipeline, we're not seeing that good of results. Remember those 109th graders I mentioned, 43 of them go on to college, but just 19 of them end up with some sort of a degree. So if we're going to develop these skilled workforces and be better stewards of taxpayer resources, things are going to have to change. I like to think of it in terms of getting people with college degrees. I like to think of it as if I owned a retail store that was not doing well. I think it would be smarter for me to figure out why someone walks in the front door of that store and walks out without buying anything than it is to worry about how I push more people in through the front door of the store is the first thing. That's kind of what we're trying to do here, saying, look, we have a lot of people who enter college. We don't get nearly enough of them through. Why? What can we do to change that? One of the things we want to do is we want to just change the financial incentives in higher education. Right now, we have a formula that I think it's fair to say is antiquated, that's based almost exclusively on enrollment. The amount of money you get to run your college, it depends on how many, rear ends are in seats at a particular date in the fall. I think a much more modern and efficient way to do this is to put much more emphasis on completing college, on being there in May as well as in October, in actually producing these degrees. Now, it's going to be different. It's not one size fits all for our institutions. It's a different set of processes and a different set of expectations at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville than it is at, University of Memphis in Memphis. But We'd like to change the funding formula so that a much more significant part of it has to do with the ability and to actually produce degrees on the part with these young people. I like to think of it in terms of you incent certain things, and you want to make it so the faculty and the administrators of our higher education institutions at all levels, when they're taking their shower in the morning, that's what they're thinking about. How do we get kids through? How do we get them degrees? And I think by changing these formulas in this way, we can help to drive that change. I would say that in this group there's universal, it cuts across. I mean, there's Democrats and Republicans and people, and there's universal feeling that this formula needs to change. There's a lot of work to be done to make it actually work in the real world, but it's something that I want to move forward. If we get the financial incentives right, we can drive the behavior we want, which is not how many people sign up in the fall, it's how many graduate with degrees in the end. Now, I want to talk for a second about community colleges and technology centers. I really think that they are fundamental to the strategy of getting more degrees in Tennessee. We have 24 or so technology centers that do a great job working with employers to create real-world certificate programs that usually translate to good-paying jobs here in Tennessee. We have got one of the best networks of community colleges in the country. Tennessee really has, when you step back, it has a very fine network of community colleges. And many of those colleges, in addition to their own campuses, have put satellite operations in various places to bring them out and bring them closer to people. We need to make better use of that asset in helping to get kids degrees and helping to get kids into four-year programs when they complete the community college. Again, you got a model for how to do that here at Northeast State Community College. I'd like to take some of these innovative business relationships that have been created at Northeast State, like the Project Reinvest at Eastman, for example, and hold them up as models for the rest of the state. For state government, there's also a budget benefit. Not only do community colleges offer the best path for improving overall completion, they also happen to be a lot more affordable, both for students and for the state. It costs less money for someone to be in a community college than it does in a full four-year college. When I went to college, I would say most students who went to college did what I did, which is you go in as a freshman the year after you graduate from high school, and then 4 years later you sort of come out with a degree at the other end. And there certainly are still lots of students who do that, but I think of it like families used to be a man and a woman and two children and a white picket fence somewhere. Today, there's a lot of different kinds of families. Today, there's a lot of different ways in which people get that college education. An awful lot of kids get a 2-year education at a community college and then move on to a 4-year school. I've got nieces and nephews galore back up home who have done exactly that is the way to get a college education. Some of them are teachers, some of them have gone on to other things, but that's been the way that they've done it. At the moment, our community colleges are kind of a loose-knit confederation of schools. I'd like them to operate as a much more tightly knit system with a few changes in place to do that. First of all, I would like to see a statewide transfer policy so that any student who earns a 2-year degree, we're going to define the courses, but earns a 2-year degree at a community college is guaranteed of being able to transfer that credit to one of our 4-year colleges and enter that college as a junior. The number of people who I have talked with who have this frustration about not knowing what courses translate where and so on has been tremendous. There's no reason for that. They're all part of the same thing. They're all run by the legislature and the governor. We need to unify that and make it possible. What that means is establishing a lot more common courses and catalogs that promote consistency and quality. If you want to ask a 4-year college to accept these credits, it's fair to ask them what they think should be in those courses. But what I want is if you take Calculus 101 or Biology 101 in a community college, it's the same everywhere, and it's been decided that this is a course that you can take to another school and use for credit. I can't tell Vanderbilt what to take or Princeton what to take, but we certainly can, with our four-year schools, be very clear about this. I mean, to put it in specifics, what I'd only like to see is our community college have a course catalog. There's always going to be local specific courses that are responsive to what Eastman needs here or what Volkswagen needs in Chattanooga or something else, but a lot of the courses can be common, and maybe, you know, the ones where the title is in bold are the ones, those are four-year courses. Those are courses you can take to a four-year institution, and you can take them knowing that if you're successful in passing them, they are usable for credit in Tennessee. There's other changes, but these are the big ones. In putting together these strategies, we've worked with, these didn't just sort of come out of the blue over lunch. We've worked with experts from groups like National Center for Higher Education Management, Complete College America, which is something that's been funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who've been very supportive of these efforts. I think they all agree that Tennessee can be a national leader in the college completion movement if we knuckle down and make some common sense changes. Remember that at the community colleges, I gave you those numbers. In community colleges in Tennessee across the state, 12% of the students who begin community college will end up with some sort of an associate's degree in the two-year period, or end up with an associate's degree. That is way, way too low, and we can produce a lot more people with those degrees and people with the ability and desire to go on to four-year schools with this community college system we have if we make some of these changes. I've been active in starting over this last year, being involved a little more nationally in some of these things. I had a chance last month to be named co-chair of Achieve, of the organization which has worked across the country in these standards. They have a government and an industry co-chair in this organization. Craig Barrett, who some of you may know, is the former Intel CEO, is the business chair. Tim Pawlenty, who is the governor of Minnesota, is the former government chair. Tim is leaving his job as governor and moving on and conceivably running for higher office. As many of you probably know, and felt like Achieve has been a very nonpartisan organization, that probably was the right thing to do to step aside, and so I'm going to continue doing that, and I think that'll help. I mean, that will give me access to a lot of people and some foundations and a lot of other kinds of things that can be an awful lot of help, I think, right here in Tennessee. Now, the reason I want to just close by saying, look, politically, we are lined up to accomplish some really good things this session, and I'm going to lay these out in great detail next Tuesday night when I speak to the legislature. But I need your help. I have looked to the business community these last 7 years, particularly when it comes to education, and it has been a tremendous help. The business community is, by its nature, full of leaders, opinion leaders in the community. Business leaders have an enormous self-interest in having kids come out of college and having a workforce that they can use to build their businesses. They've got stability. The same business leaders are going to be there whether I'm governor or whoever the next one is or whoever the former one is, and so on. I need that help from the business community in getting this done. I need you to talk to your legislators about the importance of this stuff, including people I'm sure sitting in this room. I need you to talk to the press about the importance of doing this stuff. This is a real opportunity in a very short period of time to make some significant changes, and I'm asking for your help in doing it. It is a real ask. This is not a slam dunk to get this stuff done, and the K through 12 stuff in particular is really charting off in a very different direction than has historically been true here in our state. It is time, however, to do this, and I ask your help in making it happen. I just close by saying, look, I've never known anybody to run for public office without being absolutely for public education. Nobody has ever said I'm against public education. The real difference comes as to where you put it in the priority list when the money gets tight. And the difference comes whether, whether people are willing to step up and do sometimes difficult things that may, cause concern in some people. Teachers are among the most respected people in the community, along with people like medical professionals and so on, and people are going to listen to them, and this produces anxiety on the part of teachers. I hope that over this last 7 years that my reputation with teachers is sufficient, that they'll understand that we're trying to do stuff which further professionalizes the profession of being a teacher and not find some way to tick at them or criticize them or something else. And I'd like your help, and for those of you who represent educational institutions here in the room, certainly would like your help in that as well. As a governor, I feel like I've had a good run with the General Assembly. We've accomplished a lot of good things for Tennessee schools and students. And with this special session, I'm urging them once again to join with me and really convert some unique opportunities that are in front of us on public education. I'll close by saying I've been here a number of times. I don't know whether the next year will bring me back one more time up to this group or not. But I have never, say to you, I have never had a job I've enjoyed remotely as much as being governor of this state. And for all of you who helped me get there, thank you. And as I've told you before, for those of you who didn't, you're always forgiven, and we will move on from there. But it's been a wonderful time in my life. I hope you feel we've moved some things forward during that period of time. Thank you for the opportunity of being governor, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.